I never thought I'd come home to find an entire neighborhood dried up, not from a drought, not from a busted pipe, but from one woman's power trip. When I pulled into my driveway after 6 long months away, the lawns were yellow, sprinklers were silent, and kids weren't even outside playing. And the worst part, the new HOA president, Karen Duvall, had decided to shut off the community's water supply like she was Queen of Oakhaven. I dropped my duffel by the door, poured a glass from my kitchen tap just to check, and thank God the plumbing still worked inside my house at least. But something was off. There was this sign zip-tied to my fence, flimsy paper, with Karen's name scrawled at the bottom. All exterior water sources must comply with HOA conservation measures. No official seal, no city stamp, just her handwriting. And I knew right then Karen had turned our quiet little suburb into her personal fiefdom. Roger, my neighbor, filled me in later. While I'd been in Alabama caring for my brother, she'd clawed her way to the HOA presidency. The old board retired or moved out, probably shoved aside. Karen shut down fountains, rationed sprinkler days, then claimed the main water tank was leaking and just flipped the switch off. No water. For anyone. And nobody dared stop her because if you complained, you got hit with violation notices or threats. That night Roger warned me, keep your well quiet. He meant the old private well my grandfather dug decades before Oakhaven even existed. It wasn't on the HOA's maps, it wasn't hooked into their system. I'd updated it a few years back just in case. I nodded, but when he asked if I could spare some water for the kids, I couldn't say no. The next morning, as the sun came up, Roger showed up with empty containers, his little girl in the passenger seat, her face lit up at the thought of actual water. I led him behind my shed, pulled the cap off the well, and flipped the switch. The pump hummed, clear water flowed, and I swear he almost cried. By noon, 5 more neighbors had shown up. I told everyone the same thing. Don't make noise, don't post it online, just take what you need. I wasn't trying to start a rebellion. But in Oakhaven, where fear had replaced conversation, even kindness felt like mutiny. Of course, Karen couldn't let that slide. That afternoon, she blasted out an email mandatory meeting at the clubhouse critical infrastructure crisis and a bold warning that any unauthorized water usage will be subject to citation. When she stood up at that meeting in her cream pantsuit, smiling like a courtroom villain, she declared all private wells illegal. I raised my hand and said, "That's not true. Section 3.7 bans new wells, not pre-existing ones. Mine's been here 43 years, longer than the HOA. Her smile cracked just for a second, but Karen doubled down. The next morning I found a notice zip-tied to my fence threatening daily fines for non-HOA authorized water usage. No citation number, no signature, just her logo and her intimidation. And I'll admit for a moment it worked. I sat at my kitchen table staring at that letter, my head pounding. The fines kept climbing $250 a day, maybe more. My wife suggested maybe we should just shut it down, sell the house, walk away. And for the first time I wondered if she was right. Maybe I was the stubborn fool clinging to a fight I couldn't win. Maybe it was my pride, not principle, keeping that well running. I thought about ripping out the hose, ending it before things spiraled worse. But then Roger came back, and Ellie from 2 streets over, and Tom and a single mom with a stroller. They weren't angry, they were desperate. They carried empty jugs, babies on their hips, and stories about notices for non-standard curtains or excessive flowers. Karen wasn't just punishing me. She was punishing everyone. And when I saw the way they looked at my well, not as a luxury, but as survival, I knew quitting wasn't an option. So I dug in. I documented everything. I installed cameras around my house. I printed flyers and held a porch meeting where we spread out violation letters like battle plans. People whispered their stories, shared photos, and I realized Karen's reign thrived on silence. Break the silence, and she loses control. Doug, a friend who worked at the city water board, confirmed my suspicions. The HOA had no authority over water distribution. Then Gary, one of the old HOA founders, handed me the original maps, proof my well had always been separate. And finally, an anonymous thumb drive showed up photos of Karen's fountain green grass glistening, fed by a secret pipeline rerouted from the community supply. She hadn't shut off the water, she'd stolen it. That was the turning point. I knew she'd come after me harder, and she did. Private security showed up at my door in polo shirts demanding to inspect my property. I told them to get a warrant. One night I caught 2 men with bolt cutters near my shed sent by Karen to sever my pipes. I filmed everything, logged every notice, every threat. And when the city inspector finally came, I handed over a binder an inch thick. The inspection sealed it. My well, legal, certified cleaner than city water. Karen's pipeline fraud. Unauthorized redirection of municipal supply. That triggered an emergency hearing at City Hall. I'll never forget walking into that room. The commissioners sat like judges, the clerk typing furiously, neighbors behind me, silent but present. Karen sat across, pale but defiant, flipping through her thin folder of excuses. When the charges were read, unauthorized, water manipulation, harassment, obstruction of essential services, she tried to argue it was for the greater good. But Doug presented the evidence, Gary testified, and then it was my turn. I stood at the podium, steady voice binder in hand. I told them I'd lived in Oak Haven for 13 years, served my country, raised a family, and never seen the community more afraid than under Karen's so-called leadership. I showed them her violation letters, fines for curtains, mailboxes, playsets, and yes, for sharing water when our taps ran dry. And then I said, she weaponized the HOA. She turned water, a basic human necessity, into a punishment for people she didn't like. The room went still. Even the court reporter slowed her typing. Karen's hands trembled. She tried to rebut, muttering about miscommunication, but nobody bought it. When the commissioners returned from recess, the verdict was clear, effective immediately. Oak Haven HOA was suspended. Karen Duvall removed as president, all fines nullified, and the case referred for civil review. The gavel cracked once, and just like that, the empire she'd built on fear collapsed. I didn't cheer. I didn't celebrate. I just watched her stand, clutch her thin folder, and walk out of that room flanked by silence. Her power was gone, her throne had crumbled, and the well still flowed. Sometimes authority isn't about rules or logos or titles, it's about what people believe in, and once the fear breaks, power breaks with it.